Good morning, Christchurch, and welcome to CC Online. My name is Carol.
And I'm Melissa. We're so excited that you are with us. You're joining us from all over Northeast Florida and all over the country. Thanks for spending your Sunday with us.
We are so glad that you've chosen to make us a part of your weekend experience, and we love to get to know you. If you're just checking us out for the first time online, welcome. Again, we are so glad that you are here, and we want to connect with you, and we have a really easy way to do that. Drop a little hello in the chat. And you can also create a profile if you're here at live.christ.church, and that's actually a pretty easy thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah. Some people may not know that. That's a great way for you to connect with us early on. And if you want to do that, you're just going to go to live.christ.church, and right in the top left-hand corner, you're going to see three little lines. You know, my husband calls those a hamburger.
I just call it a menu.
Yeah, it's a little stretch.
I feel like it's still like a food.
It's a little stretch. Yeah, absolutely. So you're going to click on that, and if you've got a profile, you can sign in. If you are wanting to create a profile, you can do that as well. Sign up there, and that way we can reach out to you this week. No pressure at all, but we'd love to be able to connect with you. We've also got our online hosts every single week in the chat, so make sure you say hello to them as well. And those of you watching from YouTube Live, we'll drop a link in that chat as well so you can connect with us.
Yeah, we are all about community here. We would love to get to know you. We'd love to get to do life with you, whether you are here, whether you are just in the Northeast Florida area, or even if you're all the way across the world. We know we have people joining us from all corners of the globe, which is awesome. And speaking of community and relationships, that is what we are in the middle of a series about. We are all about relationships. That's what we're focusing on here in the series called Stress Fractures. We're diving into week 7 of the series. It's been amazing. We know that relationships are messy. They require time and effort, and they require Jesus. Let's be real.
Yes, for sure.
That's true in our lives, and it's absolutely true in Scripture as well. So this week's actually a pretty heavy topic.
Yeah, it is. It's a little heavy. We're talking about reconciliation, so don't close your laptop just yet. We'd love for you to hang with us through this. Pastor Jason's actually going to lead us through an exercise a little bit later in the service. So if you're at home and want to grab a piece of paper to be a part of that, we'll also post something in the chat so that you can participate in that moment with us.
Yeah, it's going to be an awesome moment, an awesome time for all of us to come together.
Yeah.
Another thing that we're going to be doing in the service today, something we do every week here at Christ Church, is communion. This is something that we do to honor the sacrifice that Jesus has made for us, and we come together as a body of believers to do so later on in the service. And you guys are part of Christ Church, and we'd love for you to join in on this moment of remembering Jesus with us. So take some time to gather whatever your communion items are, whether it's juice, water, crackers, whatever you have, to join in on the moment of remembering Jesus with us later on in the service.
Absolutely. Well, up first, we're about to start our service and sink in with everyone in the worship center. We're going to start with some singing. This first song is called This Is Our God. So get some energy in us this morning. And I know it feels a little weird. You might be at home and to sing out by yourself. We'd love for you to join in with us. Just pretend you're in the car or in the shower and just shout it out.
We are so excited to dive into service this morning. We love you, church. Happy Sunday.
Church, come on, let's all stand to our feet. We're so excited to have you here with us today. Come on, we're just going to do some worship and some praise together this morning. Those walls that we called sin and shame, They were like prisons that we couldn't escape. But he came and he died and he rose. Those walls are rubble now. Remember those giants we called death and grave? They were like mountains that stood in our way. But he came and he died and he rose. Those giants are dead now. Come on, sing, this is our God. This is our God, this is who he is. He loves us. This is our God, this is what he does. He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Remember that fear that took our breath away. Faith so weak that we could barely pray. But he heard every word and every whisper. And now those altars in the wilderness tell the story of his faithfulness. Never once did he fail, and he never will. This is our God, this is who he is. He loves us. This is our God, this is what he does. He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Who pulled me out of that pit? He did, he did. Who paid for all of our sins? Nobody but Jesus. Who pulled me out of that pit? He did, he did. Who paid for all of our sins? Nobody but Jesus. Who rescued me from that grave? Yahweh, Yahweh. Who gets the glory and praise? Nobody but Jesus. Who rescued me from that grave? Yahweh, Yahweh. Who gets the glory and praise? Nobody but him. This is our God. This is who he is. He loves us. And this is our God. This is what
presence of God into our lives, we're going to see change and transformation. So let's sing with conviction and faith that we see, that we know that a breakthrough is coming. Come on. I know a breakthrough is coming. By faith, I see a miracle. My God has made me a promise and I won't stop now. Yeah, I know a breakthrough is coming. By faith, I see a miracle. My God has made me a promise and I won't stop now. No, no, no. I know a breakthrough is coming. By faith, I see a miracle. My God made me a promise and I won't stop now. I won't stop now. I know a breakthrough is coming. By faith, I see a miracle. My God made me a promise and I won't stop now. Let's sing together your presence. Your presence is an open door. We want you, Lord, like never before. Your presence is an open door. So come now, Lord, like never before.
Amen, church. You guys can go and grab a seat. We're so excited to be able to worship with you today, dive back into God's word together. If it's your first time here, man, we're so excited to be here, to get into God's word, to worship with you, but also just to connect with you. We hope this is a place that feels like family. So if it's your first time, take out your phone, open it up, and we say all the time, tap the tag in front of you, but let's be real, you kind of got to hold it there for just a second. A little form will pop up, tap that connect button. We'd love just to get to know you, find a way that we can connect with you this week. On top of that, if you're brand new or if you've been here for a while, we're just a couple weeks away from another round of Starting Point. So Starting Point is kind of where you find out who we are as a church and how you can be a part of it all. So our team, after second service in a couple weeks, they'll be over there to meet you, to talk to you about the vision of what God is doing around here. But for me, always most importantly, how you can be a part of what God is doing here at Christ Church. So again, hold your phone up against that tag. You can click on the Starting Point button and register for that. On top of that, for everybody in here, tonight is our Abide Live prayer and worship service. So at 6 o'clock, you can purchase dinner out here in the atrium, and then in here tonight at 6:30, a time for all of us, maybe, in the middle of maybe chaos in the relationships around us, maybe in the anxiety of the work week that is coming up, in the unknown of what God might be doing in our lives at times. I think Abide is a perfect opportunity for us all to come, to catch our breath just for a second, turn our attention towards God, spend some quiet moments in prayer, spend some moments with our hands raised in worship. It's an opportunity for Jesus to capture our hearts, capture our attention. So we'd love for you to come back. There's childcare for the littles. We'd love for you to come back tonight, 6 o'clock for dinner, 6:30 back in here for Abide Live prayer and worship. Now, I get to be a part of our kids and students team on a weekly basis, and we're kind of just coming out of summer, which is always a blur for the kids and student team, all the events and all the trips, not to mention Sunday keeps happening, right? And so it's a little bit crazy. And so this year, our team kind of like made note to pay attention to a few things, and the goal was that at the end of the summer, we could look back and not forget all the massive things that God had done, all the ways that God had shown up in the lives of families and volunteers and kids and students. And one of the things that we were kind of paying attention to was that in the months of June, July, and August this last year, 49 kids and students got baptized and gave their lives to Jesus. Yeah, you totally, yeah. And obviously, Jesus gets all the credit and he gets all the glory for what he is doing in the next generation, no doubt about it. But I also can't help but look at those trips, at the events that were made possible because of your faithful commitment to giving. And the trips that wouldn't have happened. And Jesus doesn't need a trip to get a hold of a student. He doesn't need it, but by golly, I don't know why he seems to use them. And he doesn't need a crazy event to capture a kid's heart. He doesn't need those things, but for some reason, we've just continued to see that he uses them to draw kids and students back to himself. So, man, let me just say on behalf of the kids and students team, thank you for being faithful with your giving, that it allows us to be a part of what Jesus is doing in the next generation. So if you're looking to give today, again, you can just tap the tag in front of you. There's giving boxes on the way out. Most of all, though, again, today, we're excited. We're back in the book of Genesis. If you have your workbooks with you, we'll be back on, I believe it's page 67. We're going to get back into God's word here together in just a minute, but I'm going to pray and then we'll get at it today. Let's pray. God, you are good. You've been faithful. We've been in the book of Genesis talking about how faithful you were thousands of years ago. How faithful you were to Abraham and to Isaac and to Jacob. And God, I guess it's the faithfulness that you had to them that assures me of the faithfulness that you have to us today. So God, in the same way that you led them, lead us today. God, in the same way you captured their hearts, capture ours today. God, in the same way that you got their attention a few thousand years ago, God, you have our attention right now. So God, on behalf of us all, I declare that you have our eyes right now. You have our hearts right now. You have our focus right now. Because Jesus, we love you the most. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
My name is Brian Pace. I attend the Mandarin campus.
My name is Lynn Pace, and I attend the Mandarin campus. I was newly married, and things were not going the way I thought they were going to go.
We were both just two single kids, in a sense, that just met each other, and within probably 6 or 7 months, got married.
When we got married, we really didn't know each other. We met each other in the Army, and we started dating and got married fairly quick. And I just realized that we weren't doing things the right way and that we needed to have Jesus in our lives.
I was like, I'm a Christian. I've been in church my whole life. I guess I got jaded to the fact that Jesus was there.
We just had a lot of arguments. We were just not in the same page. I think coming to church, seeing what a marriage should look like and what should be about, that is not about him and it's not about me, but we needed to focus on Jesus. I think that has made it better.
Putting God first in our marriage has definitely helped solidify our decisions, our just growth in each other. The fact that we're both so strong in our faith has helped just our marriage grow, and that we can lean on each other.
The church being here has been great. It helps us stay aligned with what our goal is and keeping Jesus at the center of it.
Have you ever had to come face to face with somebody that you were in conflict with and deal with that conflict? Maybe you were the one who was in the wrong. Maybe they were the one who was in the wrong, but there's a conflict between the two, and now you have no choice but to deal with that conflict face to face. Of all the things in life, all the things that we do, I think this is one of the most uncomfortable moments in our lives. More uncomfortable than tripping in public, more uncomfortable than sending a text to the wrong person, more uncomfortable than being out in front of people and knowing your fly is down, more uncomfortable than walking out of the bathroom with some toilet paper behind you. Dealing with these conversations, dealing with conflict with somebody else might be one of the most uncomfortable conversations we ever have. In fact, show of hands, how many people would say you look forward to having those type of conversations? Nobody? Yeah, you're right. It is so awkward. It is so uncomfortable because you're like, yay, let's go get vulnerable. Like, yay, let's go and deal with some hard stuff. Yay, let's go and say I was wrong. Yay, let's go and let me say I'm sorry. Yay, let me humble myself. There might be no other situation in life that makes us more uncomfortable than having to deal with conflict. Because it forces us. It forces us to go to a place that is uncommon and unnatural. It makes us feel, well, a bit weird. In fact, let me ask this follow-up question. How many of you would say you go to great lengths to avoid those kind of conversations? A couple of you, come on now. Some of you are going to great lengths to avoid raising your hand right now, all right? But come on, we know how we do this, right? You get into an argument with your spouse, your husband, or your wife, and all of a sudden you have to work late, right? Or maybe instead of taking the direct way home, you take the long way home because you don't want to have to jump into that conversation. Or maybe it's with somebody at work. Maybe it's with a boss. Maybe it's with a coworker and you have to call in sick, right? Or maybe I'm working remote today because I'm trying to avoid that situation. Or maybe it's with someone you live in the neighborhood with that you've done life with for years after years, and now you have this conflict, and so you drive past your normal Publix to go to the next Publix down the street because you don't want to run into them in the produce section, right? Or maybe it's a church. Maybe you're in a conflict with somebody at church, and so you switch small groups, or you start attending a different service. Or maybe for you, you switch churches completely, all because you're just trying to avoid dealing with conflict. We go to great lengths to try to avoid conflict in our lives. But here's what the Bible says. The Bible says, if it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Hey, can I just be honest? I read that verse, I know that verse, and here's what I think. If it depends on me, if all it depends on me is to live at peace with everybody else, there will probably be a trail of bodies, of broken relationships behind me if it only depends on me. Because here's what I've learned. I've got to have Jesus. I need Jesus in me. I need the Holy Spirit transforming me. I need the gospel being pushed into every single one of my relationships. I can't do it on my own. I need Jesus. And I don't know about you, but this week as I've been thinking about this and going back through my life and looking at some of those moments in time, those conflicts I've had with other people and things that maybe I was trying to avoid, I think about my relationship with my dad who left when I was 7. I think about a 20-year friendship with a really good friend that was ruined by pride. I think about the people I've worked with or the people I've worked for or the teammates that have come and gone. I think about being married for 27 years. I'm telling you, there's no way if it was just this guy that all those relationships would have been salvaged. I need Jesus in my life. I need the transforming power of the gospel. And what we've been watching over the past couple of weeks is this incredible transformation process that has been occurring in the life of this guy, Jacob, the third of the patriarchs that we've been looking at. We see this moment of awareness where this guy, Jacob, he steals his brother's birthright. He steals his blessing. His brother wants him dead. He goes on the run, doesn't have a penny in his pocket, lays his head down on a rock as a pillow and recognizes this can't be the best way to live. That the way I've been living my life, what I've been doing, this is not the best way. Maybe there's a better way. And then God takes him to the stage of resistance where he's trying to live this new life, but the old life keeps pulling him back in. He's trying to put on these new clothes, but these old clothes are so comfortable. And he's in this tug of war. He's in this tension between this new life and his old life, his new life and his old life. And he wants to do these things. He wants to honor God. He's just not there yet. And we see God just working with him patiently, working with him through all of his issues and leading him to this place of deep change. And last week, that's what we got to see. We got to see the situation. We got to see the circumstances and the sin in his life. God used that to bring him to this place where he's got this fear of his father-in-law Laban, the fear of his brother Esau. And he's dealing with these things and he's rubbing that genie lamp going, God, can you show up again? Can you show up one more time and rescue me from this situation? God shows up, but God does something different. God breaks Jacob. In this incredible moment last week that we witnessed, we see this wrestling match that occurred with Jacob where the pre-incarnate Jesus Christ shows up and he gently and sweetly and lovingly takes the Jacob out of Jacob. He breaks him and then he blesses him and then he gives him a new name. Meaning in the middle of this wrestling match, this pre-incarnate Jesus with his finger just touches his hip, dislocates his hip, and in that moment takes the Jacob out of Jacob. And then he asks him a question. He says, what is your name? Jesus knew his name, but he was looking for a confession. And Jacob said, I am Jacob. I am the trickster. I am the deceiver. I am the one who is all about me. And then Jesus said, because you are holding on to me, because you refuse to let go of me, that is not your identity anymore. I'm giving you a new name, and names meant something in the Bible. He said, I am calling you now Israel. The one who wrestled with God, the one who partnered with God, the one who strived with God. That is what God has been looking for ever since Genesis chapter 12. As this first family, this dysfunctional first family comes on the scene, what God has been looking for in all of this family is somebody who would partner with him. Somebody who would say, I am all in with you, God. Your plan to redeem the world, sign me up. The Bible is not about our sin. The Bible is about God's redemption. And he's just been waiting and looking for someone who would strive with him, partner with him, wrestle with him. And here is Jacob, experiencing this incredibly deep change. And now God is leading him to this place where he's learning to live on mission. But before he can do that, he's got to deal with something. He's got to deal with a long 20-year conflict with his brother. And the last time we saw his brother, the last time we heard anything about Esau was a godless man living life by his flesh. And what he wanted to do is enact revenge and kill his baby brother. And so guess what? Now these two are going to come face to face. Now they're going to be forced to deal with this conflict. And I don't know about you, but I've been excited to see what's about to happen. I mean, are fireworks going to fly or what? And so let's jump in and see. I know everyone's been hanging on with bated breath, right? To see what's going to happen between these brothers. So if you have your Bibles, we're in Genesis chapter 33, page 67 in your workbook, I think Jeremy said. We're on page 67, and we're looking at this reunion between these two brothers. And remember, last we knew, Esau was after his brother. And so let me ask you this question as you're finding Genesis chapter 33. If you're about to encounter your brother after what he's done to you, what would you do? I mean, if you were in Esau's shoes, how would you respond when you first see your brother after 20 years, after he stole your birthright, after he stole your blessing, after he ran and hid like a coward? What would you do? I mean, would you go Stallone and Schwarzenegger on him? Is that what you would do? I mean, would you sit on him like a big bully brother and give him a red belly until he cried uncle? I mean, would you just ignore him and give him the silent treatment? Would you steal all of his stuff and go, ha, now we're even? Well, I don't know what you would do, but we're gonna see that God has been up to something, and not just Jacob's life for 20 years, but you're gonna see how God has also been up to something in Esau's life. And so let's jump in, verse 1, chapter 33. It says this, then Jacob, say Jacob. Thank you. Then Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming with his 400 men. Now, right off the bat, some of you are going, hold on a second, Pastor. Didn't you just say his name was changed? Didn't you just say that his name was no longer Jacob, the trickster, the deceiver, it's all about me? Didn't you say that his name was changed, that he was now Israel, the one who partners and strives and wrestles with God? Didn't he get a name change? Absolutely he did. But what you're gonna see through the rest of Genesis is this process unfolding as he's learning to live life on mission with God, that his purpose and his decisions are all pointing towards God's purpose in life. And so what you're gonna see in Genesis is 45 more times, he's gonna be referred to as Jacob. And only 23 times, he's gonna be referred to as Israel. So what gives? What's going on? He's learning to walk. He's learning to walk here. Now, I don't know if your toddler has ever got to a place where they're walking pretty comfortably, and maybe they go into your closet, or maybe they go to by the back door where all your shoes are. And they put on your boots, or they put on your shoes, and they start walking around the house wearing your shoes. You know that picture? You've probably seen that, and they're kind of clumping around the house, and they're kind of awkward like, walking like this, and maybe they tumble over because they lose their balance. That's what's going on with Jacob. I mean, he's still not yet used to being Israel yet. He's still this Jacob guy, and there's still this internal tension as he is being transformed, and that deep change is setting in. And so what you're going to see him is he's still learning to walk in these new shoes. And so here in this moment, the Bible says that he looks up, and in the distance, he sees a cloud. And he sees a cloud, and in front of that cloud are 401 men, all armed to the teeth. And I don't know about you, but I can just picture this moment. I can just picture the moment that Jacob is looking out and he sees that cloud. He sees the 400 men being led by his brother Esau. They are armed to the teeth. And I can only imagine the lump that began to form in his throat as he's going, oh my goodness, what's about to happen? And I don't know about you, I would not want to be his shorts in this moment as he sees these 401 men coming his way. And he has to be thinking, I'm finally got to deal with this. It's been 20 years, I've been running, I've been ducking this. I've been avoiding this conflict for 20 years, and now I've got nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. I'm going to be forced to deal with my brother face to face. Now, maybe you remember last week he had a plan before he met Jesus in that wrestling match. Maybe you remember last week the plan was divide my family in two. I'm gonna divide Leah and her kids and her servants, and Rachel and her kids and her servants, and then I'm gonna send Leah first. And if my brother's still in the headspace where he wants me dead, then he'll get her, and then I'll send my next family, and maybe they can get away, but for sure, I'm saving my own rear end. But you're gonna see that Jacob's no longer Jacob, he's Israel. And he's beginning to look at things a little bit differently. And so he comes up with a little bit of a modified plan. And so listen to what it says. We continue in verse 1. It says, so he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and his 2 servant wives. He put the servant wives and their children at the front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. All right, so he's not there yet, okay? I mean, he's still working on things, he's still trying to address things, but he puts a little bit different plan together, and he's gonna do things a little bit differently. We're gonna see here in a moment. But what you also see here is the generational sin that's been running through this family. You've seen this from the very beginning with his grandfather Abraham. You saw it with his father Isaac, and now you're seeing it at play in his life again. And that sin is this: favoritism. Favoritism. He's actually putting his family in order of who he loves the least, putting them first, the servant wives and their kids, and then here is Leah and her kids, and then here at the back are his favorites. Here is Rachel, and here is Joseph. And so you see this attitude, you see this generational sin that's played out in this family playing out here again. Because somewhere in his mind, he is thinking about just his escape plan still. And I think his escape plan is basically this. It's like, you know what? I don't have to be faster than the bear. I just have to be faster than the other guy in front of me, right? I mean, that seems to be his plan right here. Is like, man, I don't need to be faster than the bear. I just need to outrun that guy. And if I can run that guy, then I'm good to go. And so I can send my servant wives. I can send, Leah. And then, if I have to, then there goes Rachel. It seems to be his thinking here, but we're going to see this guy is changing. But he still has this one issue, this favoritism. And how do I know that? Circle the name Joseph. Look in your Bible, in your text. This is one of the very first times that name starts to appear, and you're gonna see it appear a couple of times. You're gonna see the name Joseph start to appear every time when we're talking about Jacob's favorites. And what you're gonna see because of that, it's gonna create a whole another generation of heartache and stress fractures in this family. And so let's continue on and see what happens next. Verse 3, it says, then Jacob went on ahead. Then Jacob went on ahead. Now I'm gonna pause here for just a second because this is where you see a little bit of a change in Jacob. Because remember, he was gonna send his servants first, and then his servant wives, and then his wives, and then his kids. But now he says, you know what? I'm not sending them first. I'm a new man. It's my issue to deal with. It's my fight. It's my reconciliation. I gotta face my brother man to man, so I shouldn't send anybody else in my place. And so Jacob goes first. It says, as he approached his brother, he bowed down to the ground 7 times before him. And so again, picture this. I mean, here's 401 men coming. They're armed to the teeth. He doesn't know what those men are up to. He doesn't know what his brother's gonna do, because the last time he saw his brother wanted him dead. And so as they begin to get close enough for them to see one another, now all of a sudden Jacob begins to bow down. And he gets up and he takes a couple steps. and he bows down a second time. He takes a couple more steps and he bows down a third time. And the Bible says he does this not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5 times, not 6 times, but 7 times. He bows down and submits to his brother. Where did he learn this? Night before. It was the very first time he ever put himself in a position of submission, where he met Jesus in that wrestling match and he realized that Jesus is above him. He learned this posture of humility. He learned this posture of submission. And so here in this moment, what he's saying to his brother is that you are greater than me and I am less than you. What he's saying in this moment, he catches this so beautiful. You are the true firstborn and I am the younger brother. In this moment, he is putting his brother, elevating his brother above himself. And he just learned this position of humility just the night before. And how many times did he bow down to his brother? 7. 7 in the Bible is the number of completion, a number of perfection. And so what Jacob is saying to his brother is, I am 100% solely, wholly committed and completely surrendered to you. I mean, it's a beautiful picture. A beautiful picture of Jacob approaching this moment of reconciliation from this position of humility. But what is going to happen? Because now it's time for them to meet. Verse 4 says this, then Esau ran to meet him and struck him down. That's not what it says, all right? If you're holding your breath, go, oh my gosh, I can't believe the story ended that way. All right, no, it doesn't say that. It says, then Esau ran to meet him and embraced him, threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they both wept. I mean, what a moment. What a powerful moment here. I mean, here is Jacob bowing down, not once, not twice, but 7 times. And he gets up the 7th time and he looks straight ahead, and here is his brother coming at him full speed. And the last thing he knew, the last thing he remembered, his brother wanted his life. His brother wanted him dead. And so now he's facing his brother who's coming at him full speed, all hairy, 200 pounds of Esau with his sword, probably on his back. He's running at him with full speed. And so here is Jacob just bracing for what's about to happen. And instead of his brother coming up and striking him, his brother comes up and hugs him, throws his arms around him, buries his furry face in his neck, and those two begin to weep. He picks him up, he gives him a bear hug. Can you just picture this moment? And this isn't a, hey bro, it's good to see you again. It isn't one of those light moments, all right? This is one of these moments that he's saying, I've been waiting for this. I've been praying for this. I've been hoping for this reunion. I've been hoping for this moment. I've been hoping for this reconciliation. And I love how God works, how God is working behind the scenes, because what we know in Jacob's life for 20 years, God has been working on him to bring him to this place of humility. But we know nothing about Esau. But what we see in this moment is obviously God had been working behind the scenes in Esau's life as well, because here is Esau distributing godly levels of grace to his brother. And listen, they haven't been writing letters to one another. There's been no text messages, hey, looking forward to meeting up with you. I mean, this is the moment in time. This is the place. They meet face to face. And here in this moment, you see the work that God has been doing behind the scenes. And God is always working in your life behind the scenes. He's always working behind the scenes. And what we see God doing is here in Jacob's life, he's been bringing him to this place of humility. In Esau's life, he's been bringing him to this place of grace. And so what we see right here is this humility and grace working together for reconciliation. I like to call it the reconciliation sandwich. You've got to have humility and you've got to have grace. Does that picture remind you, that story remind you of another story in the Bible? Another story of someone who didn't deserve grace and a person who was giving grace, running to embrace him, running to give him a hug? Reminds you of another story, right? One that Jesus tells, a very famous story. In a chapter, he's talking about lost things, lost sheep, lost coin. He talks about a lost son. Maybe you know it better as the prodigal son. This arrogant, snot-nosed kid, young adult, however old he was, comes to his father and demands his inheritance right now. Dad, I don't want to wait for you to be dead. I want what you're going to give me. I want it right now, even before you die. And so he takes the money, the father gives it to him, and he goes off to whatever their version of Vegas is and blows it on sex, drugs, and rock and roll and finds himself in the gutter. He's got no money, he's got no place to stay, he's got no job, he's got nothing to eat. And so he ends up taking a job feeding pigs, and he's there feeding pigs, and he's starving, and he's feeding these pigs slop, and he's looking at the slop, and he's salivating, wanting to eat this nasty, gross food that he's feeding the pigs. And in that moment, Jesus says, this kid came to his senses. He recognized something, said, even my father's servants have more than this. And so maybe I can go home, and maybe I can just say, I'm sorry. And maybe I can just become one of my father's servants. And so the Bible records that Jesus telling the story of this kid. All the way home, he's rehearsing his I'm sorry speech. Hey, Dad, my bad. I blew it. I'm arrogant. It's my fault. I'm sorry for disrespecting you. I'm sorry for dishonoring you. I'm sorry for everything I did. Would you just take me back? I will be a servant for you for the rest of my life. But what Jesus shares is this beautiful picture of this father seeing this kid coming in the distance. And the father doesn't stay and wait for the kid to come to him. No, the father leaps off the front porch, runs, and throws his arms around his son and gives his son grace. This beautiful, beautiful moment of reconciliation. And Jesus tells this story to help us to understand the reconciliation that we have with our Heavenly Father. But here in the story of Jacob and Esau, we see Esau distributing the same levels of grace. And so for 20 years, God's been working in these guys' life. For 20 years, behind the scenes, little did anybody know what God was trying to grow in each of them. He's trying to grow this humility in Jacob. He's trying to grow this grace inside of Esau and brings them together for this moment of reconciliation. And so throughout this whole series, we've been talking about this idea of reconciliation. It's what we're supposed to be about, this ministry of reconciliation. The week one I shared with you, there are 4 aspects of reconciliation that we need to always remember. Number 1, we got to take ownership. Basically, it means we got to humble ourselves. We got to put ourselves in a position that, you know what, maybe we caused part of this problem. We got to take ownership for what part we played. And sometimes, no, I get it. Sometimes you've done nothing wrong. But a lot of times, whether you were the first voice or maybe the second voice, there's a part of it that we need to take ownership of. And the first one we need to do is we just need to humble ourselves and take ownership for whatever part we might play. And secondly, we need to shift our perspective. And we've seen this for 20 years in the life here of Jacob. God allowed Jacob to go sit underneath his father-in-law Laban, Jacob to Jacob. And Jacob sat back and goes, man, I can't believe you would treat anybody that way. And all of a sudden, oh my goodness, I've done that my entire life. That is the way I'm shifting perspective. And number 3, hold on to hope. Gotta hold on. 20 years. 20 years this feud went on. 20 years this fracture was in this family. 20 years these two avoided this conflict. 20 years, but they held on to hope. That hope was gonna get them one day back together. And listen, I don't know where you might be. I don't know what fractured relationship that God has laid on your heart today. Maybe it's a marriage. Maybe it's a coworker or a boss. Maybe it's a classmate at school. Maybe it's with a parent. Maybe it's with an in-law. I don't know who it is, but don't give up hope. Don't give up hope. These two waited 20 years, but there was hope. Why? Because number 4, they extended lots of grace. I mean, look what Esau did. Esau extended godly amounts of grace to his brother that didn't deserve it. I mean, he did exactly what we see the father in the prodigal son story, distributing grace even though he doesn't deserve it. And so these two are embracing, these two are hugging one another, these two are crying with one another. They've not spoken a word yet. And so now, what is the first words going to be? Verse 5, it says, then Esau looked at the women and children and asked, who are these people with you? I mean, like an obvious question, right? I mean, he sees all these people. He sees, the servants. He sees the servant wives. He sees all the kids and his wives. He's like, hey, man, you've got 4 wives, 11 kids, and all these servants. You've been busy for 20 years, man. You've been up to a lot. Who are all these people? And I love Jacob's response because it shows his heart has been transformed into Israel. Listen to what it says. Here's what he responds. He says, these are the children that God has graciously given to me, your servant, Jacob replied. Then the servant wives came forward with their children and bowed before him. Next came Leah and with her children, and they bowed before him. And finally, Joseph and Rachel came forward and bowed before him. He's a changed man. See, prior what he would have said, these were mine. These were my kids. These are my servants. These are my wives. This is all of my stuff. But did you notice his words he used? These are God's. God gave them to me. God blessed me with them. God gave me this incredible gift of this amazing family. You see the heart of this changed man. And then Esau asked a second question. He asked this question. He says, and what were all the flocks and the herds I met as I came? Esau asked. Jacob replied, they are a gift. Say gift. They are, okay, wake up. All right, here we go. We'll try it again. Jags are on an hour and a half. Let's go. We're not done yet. Okay, on the count of 3, say gift. 1, 2, 3. There we go, thank you. So they are a gift, my Lord, to ensure your friendship. My brother, I have plenty, Esau answered. Keep what you have for yourself. He's like, hey man, I remember that parade of animals. We were walking towards you and I saw all these camels coming towards us and it was a pause, and then I saw some ewes and I saw some donkeys and I saw some sheep. Man, what's up with that? I mean, you don't need to give me anything. You don't need that. You can't buy my forgiveness. You can't bribe my forgiveness. You can't earn my forgiveness. I'm giving my forgiveness to you for free. So man, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. Man, isn't that just a beautiful picture? Again, here in this story, we see Esau is a picture of God and his grace. We see the story of the prodigal son. We see the father showing grace. And so in the same picture here, we see grace being given that's not deserved. And God says the same thing to you and me. You can't buy my forgiveness. You can't bribe my forgiveness. You can't earn my forgiveness. There's nothing you can do to gain my forgiveness. You can't come to church. You can't pray enough. You can't give enough money. You can't serve enough hours. There's nothing you can do to earn my forgiveness. I give it for free. God says, I'm the one who gives grace and forgiveness for free. Beautiful picture. So we continue, verse 10, but Jacob insisted, talking about this gift. He says, no, if I found favor with you, please accept this gift. Say gift. Good, from me, and what a relief to see your friendly smile. It's like seeing the face of God. Please take this gift. Say gift. I've brought you, for God has been very gracious to me. I have more than enough. And because Jacob insisted, Esau finally accepted the what? Okay, now you need to understand, anytime you see a word like the word gift that many times in just a few verses, you've got to know that there's something to it. It's called a leading word. The author is leading us to something that we might not see. And in this text, there's something that we don't see because we don't understand Hebrew. And so in the original text, those words gift, the first two times he says it, it's about paying restitution. It's about making amends. And he had this younger brother say, hey, I want to make things right. And so let me give you this gift. But in the last moment here, in the last moment, what you see, that word doesn't mean gift, it means blessing. It means blessing. What was the issue between these two brothers? A blessing that was stolen, correct? And so I want you to see something beautiful here in this moment. I want you to see what you have a younger brother in Jacob attempting to do here. What he's attempting to do is to reinstate and restore the blessing that he stole from his big brother. I mean, this is a beautiful moment. This is a movie. We're all crying at this moment, all right? Here's these two grown men and they're hugging each other and they're weeping. You have an older brother extending grace. You have a younger brother trying to make right and pay restitution, trying to make amends. Say, hey, let me restore this blessing that I stole from you. I was wrong. You see him making amends here. And here's the truth that we need to understand. Sometimes making amends, it might cost you something. Sometimes making amends actually might cost us something. Because Jesus said we're not just supposed to be people as disciples of Jesus who give forgiveness. We gotta be people who are willing to go the extra mile. In fact, that's exactly what Jesus said, talking about this issue of forgiveness. He says, if someone strikes you on one cheek, turn your other cheek. He says, if someone says, carry my stuff for a mile, you carry it another mile. Jesus says, not only are we supposed to say, I'm sorry and offer forgiveness, but we're supposed to go the extra mile. And so maybe, just maybe, if you're trying to make things right, if you're making amends sometimes cost you. It might cost you your time. It might cost you some dollars. It might cost you a little bit of pride. It might cost you some grace and some forgiveness. But here in this moment, we see this younger brother trying to make things right. And I love the description he says about his brother's face. Listen to what he says. He says, it's a relief to see your friendly smile. It's like seeing the face of God. Now, how does he know about the face of God? He just saw him, right? Remember the night before he has this wrestling match? And he says, I named this place Peniel, this place where I wrestled with God, where I saw God face to face. And what did he experience when he saw God face to face? He experienced grace. He saw the face and the grace of Jesus Christ. And now, when his brother gives him the same grace, he says, I recognize this. I recognize that face. That is the face of Christ. That is the face of grace. It's such a beautiful moment as this story is unfolding. And so Esau says, hey, let's get going. I will lead the way. Now that we're back together, now that we're brothers again, now that we're family again, let's go home. Let's do life together. And this is where we unfortunately see Jacob being a little bit of his old self. Because Jacob's like, you know what, okay, but here's the deal. And he tells like a half-truth. He says, I'm gonna follow along behind you, but because I have all these kids, it's gonna take a while. So you go on ahead of me and I'll catch up. And listen, every parent in here knows when you're traveling with kids, it's gonna take longer, right? I mean, we've all been in that place where a 4-hour trip took 6 hours. And you're like, why in the world, right? You get there and you're pulling your hair out. You're taking aspirin left and right. He's like, oh my goodness. I mean, every few minutes you pull over to go to the bathroom. You get back in the car and another one goes, I didn't go. I need to go now. Oh my goodness, stop touching me. Quit arguing. When are we going to get there? I'm hungry, right? On and on and on. And so this guy's got 11 kids. So you can only imagine how long it might take. So he tells like a half-truth, hey, I got kids, so the kids are going to slow me down. So why don't you go on ahead? I will follow along behind you. But here's the thing. He never intends to go with his brother. That's the lie. That's the half part of his truth. He doesn't intend to follow his brother. And so he says to his brother, his brother says to him, you know what, hold on a second. Before I take off, before I leave, he says, let me assign some of my men to guide and to protect you. He said, it's dangerous out there. It's dangerous, and my guys know the way, my guys know where the shade is, my guys know where the water is, my guys know where the bad guys are, and my guys know how to protect themselves, and they will protect you. And you have to think about this moment. I mean, why in the world did Esau bring 400 armed men with him? If he wasn't planning on attacking his brother, what was he planning on doing? Protecting his brother. And that was Esau's heart all along. Say, hey, let me send these guys to protect you. And Jacob's like, hey, you know what? Appreciate it, thanks, but no thanks. And so Esau turns and goes his way, and then Jacob turns and instead of following his brother, goes another way. As we skip to the last verse here, verse 18, kind of the sad little end of this story here. It says, later, after having traveled all the way from Paddan Aram, Jacob arrived safely at the town of Shechem. Say Shechem. Good. In the land of Canaan. And there he set up camp outside the town. Now, why is this a big deal? Why is this important? Well, God's the one who said, go home, go to the promised land. Then God gave him very specific instructions. He said, you're supposed to go to Bethel, and in Bethel, I want you to build an altar there. And so Jacob decides, I'm gonna do my own thing. He actually goes 30 miles from Bethel and stops in this place of Shechem, where he builds a house, he builds an altar. He is 30 miles away from obedience. He's close, but not all the way. And I think about my life, I think about our lives, how many times we find ourselves in the exact same spot, 30 miles away from obedience. We're close, we're just not quite there. You see, in this story, it points out as fact, partial obedience is full disobedience. Partial obedience is full disobedience. God has called us to be fully obedient to him. And when God gives us specific instruction, his call in our life is to follow it. And that means if we read through the Bible, we don't get to pick and choose what we want to obey. That means if we pray and we ask God to answer a prayer and he answers our prayer, but we don't like how he answered it, we don't get to go our own way. It doesn't mean we walk halfway there and say, hey God, I'm halfway there, it's close enough. I mean, 30 miles away, so close. But so many of us find ourselves in this place where we're so close to being obedient, so close to going exactly where God tells us to go, but we come up just short. And I think this story is a sad ending here to a story I would have loved to have a bow on and go, oh, look at this happy ending. These two brothers experience this incredible moment where they offer humility and grace to one another, and then they move in together, they go and they raise their families together, and they all live happily ever after. But that's not life, is it? I mean, that's only on TV. That's only in Hollywood, the happily ever after stuff. Because here's a reality. In this story, we see Jacob still learning to walk in Jacob's shoes. And here's the thing, God sees some things. God sees into the future. God sees into some issues. And he's trying to protect, he's trying to guide, he's trying to help Jacob out. But Jacob says, you know what? I'm going to only be partially obedient to you. And I think this story is added here for a very specific purpose. I think here in this moment is just a reminder of how important relationships are to our Heavenly Father. Not just our vertical relationships where we experience the face and grace of Jesus Christ, but if we've experienced the face and grace of Jesus Christ, how are we distributing that grace to people in our lives? How are we distributing that grace? Because I know in my life, and probably it's true in your life, there are people maybe we need to do some work with. And so as we're bringing this whole thing to a conclusion, as we're trying to wrap and land this plane today, let me ask this question. Who is it in your life? Who is the Esau in your life? Who is the Jacob in your life? Who is it in your life that you know you've got some work to do? And maybe God has laid this person on your heart from week 1 of this series. Maybe it's a name you wrote in the back of your workbook. Maybe it's a name that when you walk in here, and we start talking about this, the Holy Spirit just laid it on your heart. Odds are every single one of us right now know that person. We felt that sting. We remember that pain. We remember that conflict. And maybe like Jacob and Esau, we've been avoiding deal with it. But maybe God has brought us all here today to hear this story and see this reconciliation, say it's possible. It's possible in our lives. And so I want to challenge all of us today to take some time because, you know, the Bible says if it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And here's what I can tell you. If it depends on you, it's not going to happen. It depends on me alone, it's not going to happen. It's got to depend on us and Jesus working together. But why? Why is this important? We'll listen to what Paul says. He says, all this is a gift from God who brought us back to himself through Christ. And God has given us this task of reconciling people to him. For God was in Christ reconciling the world to himself, no longer counting people's sins against them. And he gave us this wonderful message of reconciliation. And so when people see your face, do they see the face and grace of Jesus Christ? This vertical relationship that we have with him, that we've experienced the forgiveness and grace of our Heavenly Father. And now we take that vertical grace and forgiveness and we distribute it horizontally to all the relationships in our lives. Are we in the position here of Jacob where maybe we need to learn a little humility? Are we in the position of Jacob here where maybe we need to go and say, I was wrong, I'm sorry, I need to make amends? Or maybe we're in the position of Esau, where we need to go and extend godly levels of grace when it's not deserved. Who is the person in your life? Here's what I know about Jesus, because Jesus told the story of this prodigal son and this father. Every single one of us are in the story of the prodigal son, aren't we? Every single one of us had to experience a father reaching his arms out to offer us forgiveness. And so who is it? Who is it in our lives that we need to forgive? When you walked in here today, and no matter what campus you are, you received a card. You had that card, go ahead and pick that card up right now. Let me see that card. Hold it up, that's all right. Everyone take that card, let me see it. Here's what I want us to do next couple moments. That person, whoever it is in your mind, your heart, whoever the Holy Spirit's laid there, I want you to write their name on it. If you don't have a pen, maybe you can borrow someone from next to you. And I just want you to take a moment and write a name, and maybe it's an ex. And maybe it's a current spouse. Maybe it's one of your kids, maybe it's a mom or dad, maybe it's a friend from school, maybe it's a teacher from school, maybe it's someone here at the church. Who is it in your life that maybe you need to do some work with? Maybe you need to show up with humility or you need to show up with grace. Who is it in your life? And maybe the name you need to write on that card is not somebody else's name. Maybe the name you need to write on that card is your name. Because maybe you've not yet made that relationship with God right. Accepted his reconciliation, accepted the gift of Jesus Christ who stood in the gap for you and me and made it possible for us and our broken, damaged relationship with God to have that relationship brought back together. And so maybe it's you. Maybe today it's you that you need to write. Maybe today is the day you're gonna make a decision. You've been waiting, don't wait 20 years to make a decision for Jesus. Accept that love, accept that forgiveness, accept that grace, and you can experience the forgiveness today. You can embrace that forgiveness today. We can give forgiveness away today. And so who is it? Who is it in your life? Who is it that you need to do some work with this week? And here's what I know, our horizontal relationship reflects our vertical relationship. How we love Jesus, how we accept the grace and forgiveness that's been given to us is how we distribute it to everybody else. And so who is that person? Who's the name on that card? Who's that name that maybe you just need to go and do some work with today? Who is that name that needs to see the face and the grace of Jesus Christ? And so what we're gonna do here in just a moment as we wrap up, I'm going to say a prayer. And then the band's gonna play some songs here, and we're gonna give everyone an opportunity to bring that card and place it up here. And you can see the baskets are full from the last hour up here. We're gonna encourage you to come and to just take the step of obedience here this morning. That step of obedience, say, God, you know what? I'm gonna do this. I've been putting it off. I've been putting it off for years, but I'm gonna do it today. And so I wanna encourage you after I pray and the music starts to come up here and drop your cards up here at the altar and just give it over to God and say, God, I'm gonna move. I'm gonna move today in this direction to heal this broken and shattered relationship. If you don't have a pen, you're like, man, I don't have a pen. We got some stations on the outside with some pens. You can come up there and you can write your name and drop it in these baskets. But here's what I know. God doesn't want you to leave today without addressing this in our life. He cares, not just about that vertical relationship. He desperately cares about our horizontal relationships. Because if we are gonna be the face and grace of Jesus, then we've got to go and extend the grace of Jesus Christ. Would you pray with me? Jesus, we come to you in this moment. And I just ask for courage. I ask for courage as we jump in and we take a bold step of faith. We step out of a row, we step out of a chair, we step out of a riser to walk down and place a name that's been placed on my heart by you in this basket, to make a commitment to say, I'm gonna be obedient. I'm gonna be obedient and I'm gonna do my best to bring reconciliation to this relationship in my life. Jesus, I thank you for the example that we have with Jacob and Esau. I thank you for the reminder that we can't do this on our own. We desperately need you. And so Holy Spirit, would you show up? Would you show up in this moment? And would you help us to take bold, courageous steps of faith and obedience to make a commitment to address and to confront a conflict in our life. Jesus, we love you. Thank you for loving us. And we pray these simple words, less of me and more of you. It's in your holy name we pray. Amen. Just want to invite you down during the song.
How great the chasm that lay between us, how high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. The cross is spoken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. seal the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Oh Jesus, yours is the victory. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Oh God, you are my living hope.
Lord, I confess that I've been a criminal. I've stolen your bread and sang my own song. And Lord, I confess that I'm far from innocent. These shackles I wear, well, I bought on my own. Scarlet sins had a crimson cross. You nailed my death to that old rugged cross. An empty slate at the empty grave. Thank God that stone was rolled away. Lord, I confess that I've been the prodigal, made for your house, but walked my own. Then Jesus came and tore down my prison walls, and death came to life when he called me by name. Scarlet sins and a crimson wept over the ashes, a wide open tomb where there should be a casket. The children are singing and dancing and laughing. The Father is welcoming, this is our homecoming. Roses in bloom, pushed up from the embers. Rivers of tears flow from good times remembered. Families are singing and dancing and laughing. The Father is welcoming, this is our homecoming. Heaven joins in with the glorious sound, and a great cloud of witnesses all gather round. 'Cause the ones that were lost are finally found. The Father is welcoming, this is our homecoming. Scarlet sins at a crimson cost, He nailed my debt to that old rugged cross. An empty slate at the empty grave, thank God that stone was rolled. Oh, 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 the Father is welcoming, this is our homecoming. The Father is welcoming, this is our homecoming.
Just a beautiful visual reminder of a father with outstretched arms welcoming his children home. And no matter where you are on that journey, God's arms are always wide open, waiting for you to come home. I'm so proud of so many of you here today that took a bold, courageous step to walk out of that aisle and down here to the front and drop a card in these baskets. I know it took courage. And so I applaud you for that courage. And I'm going to continue to pray for the next step as you continue to seek reconciliation in your relationships. And I love what Jesus says to us. He says to us in the Sermon on the Mount, says, before you come to church and you offer sacrifices, before you come and do any of the business of the church, and if there's somebody in your life that you have a conflict with, you go and deal with that. So this morning, that's exactly what we've done. And we're going to continue to pray, continue to thank Jesus who brought us reconciliation with our Heavenly Father, and that we would be the face and the grace of Jesus to those here in our lives. So would you bow with me as we go and remember the sacrifice He made for us? Jesus, we come to you in this moment of communion, of unity and togetherness. And we want to be what Jacob was, someone who strove with you, someone who partnered with you, someone who believed in the reconciliation of your world and said, put me in. I want to be a part of what you are doing to bring the face and grace of Jesus to this world. I thank you so much for the courage of people in this room who took a bold, obedient step of faith today. I pray that that obedience will be rewarded. They will see the blessing of holding on to you. I pray for reconciliation. I pray for healing. I pray for hope. I pray for forgiveness and grace. Would you help us to be a people, your people, that whenever anybody sees our face, that there's no doubt that they see the face and the grace of Jesus in us. And so Jesus, we thank you for being the one who stood in the gap for us, who reconciled our sinful lives with a perfect Father. And so Jesus, right now we eat this piece of bread to remember your body, your arms that you extended on the cross for us. Let's remember Jesus. And Jesus, in the same way, we take this cup of juice, and as we drink this, we remember the cup of suffering that you drank for us. Let's remember Jesus. Jesus, thank you so much for the promise of grace and forgiveness. And we know there's nothing we can do to buy it or to bribe it or to work for it or to earn it. It's a gift that you have freely given to us. And so thank you. Thank you for pouring your grace out on us. And help us to go and distribute your grace to everyone in our lives. Jesus, we love you. It's in your holy and your precious name we pray. Amen. Listen, church, if you're here today and you wrote your name on a card and you want to make a decision today, you want to reconcile that broken relationship with our Heavenly Father, I want to encourage you here in just a moment. My team will be down here. We'd love to pray with you and talk with you about that decision. If you need prayer for a card that you placed up here, we would love to pray over you as well. And just know tonight during our Abide services, these cards are going to remain here and we're going to pray over you and pray over these cards tonight. That the Holy Spirit would move in our lives and that God would be working behind the scenes in our lives to bring reconciliation. And so join us tonight, 6 o'clock. The door's open, there's food, 6:30. We start our prayer service in here. Love to see you in here tonight. God bless you, church. Let's go be the grace and face of Jesus and go Jags. Take care, church. See you next week.